Zach, you let me know when you're ready and I'll get set up to record.
Go ahead and get.
Yeah, get organized.
Take a deep breath.
Is there anybody here to take order for Coca-Colas?
Had I
Ooh, in a
known,
nice glass bottle frosted. Mm.
you are such a southerner. Right?
Mother's milk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know Cindy always poo-pooed the concept of a diet Coke. No, it had to be
Yes.
the full strength in the frosty bottle, right?
Okay,
Okay,
here we go.
hang on one second here.
Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, June 18th, and we are having a Pickens County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Present is Doug, Suzanne, and then we have Jasmine online, so we have a quorum.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, great.
Okay,
Tonight we'll be discussing the Owl Creek Master Plan.
And
I don't know, did you want to, I don't think we have any staff comments on anything, but just check if there's anyone on, I don't know if everyone online is here for the Owl Creek plan or if there's anybody with public comment.
Yeah, I'll start off with, if any commissioner comments. No? All right, and then any staff comments? That are not pertaining to this. Okay, and is there anyone, online that'd like to make a comment not pertaining to the, master plan that we have on the agenda?
if you'd like to speak, *6, will raise your hand.
okay. Thank you, Zach. I am Ellen Sassano. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager. And Tim Malloy is on screen with us tonight. He is TGMC Land Use Planning Consultant who did the lion's share of the work to update this plan, this master plan. And he'll be tag teaming the presentation with me. I'll go ahead and start and then he'll jump in. So going to the agenda. Tim, if you could, yeah. I'm just gonna talk about the purpose, what we'll be doing tonight, basically as a as a starter opener, and then Tim will jump into existing conditions, and then I will give you a summary of the plan updates. Going to the next slide, the meeting purpose. You've seen this first bullet a lot recently. By state statute, the Planning and Zoning Commission is responsible for master plan review and adoption. This is a public hearing for review and adoption of the 2024 Owl Creek Master Plan. And staff is recommending that you take action to approve the resolution of the Pickens County Planning and Zoning Commission adopting the 2024 Owl Creek Master Plan, the area depicted on resolution map Exhibit B, and certifying the master plan to the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado. So that's why we're here. And if we go to the next slide, Tim is going to start to walk us through just the existing conditions for the Owl Creek plan, master plan area. For those who aren't intimately familiar with the area, this is a good description of the lay of the land. So Tim, if you want to jump into the planning area description, that would be great.
Yep, so here we have in front of you a map that shows the Owl Creek Master Plan area, which is right there on the edge of north of Maroon Creek, upslope from the airport, kind of squashed between the airport and the town of Snowmass Village. The planning area contains about 5,000 acres, which is one of the smallest actually master plan areas in the county. And it contains the Owl Creek Caucus area, which you see here on the map in red. And yeah, most of it is public land, but there are some large lot residential tracts as well. Since the plan was last updated, there have been we're proposing here some changes to the boundary of the planning area. The purple dashed line that you see on this map, that's the old planning area boundaries, and the dark dashed black line is the proposed boundary. And you see here there have been a few changes. For example, we're talking about incorporating the Eagle Pines subdivision into the planning area that had actually previously been not in any planning area. And we're also making some adjustments here along the Brush Creek, Owl Creek planning area to get parcels in total into the appropriate planning area so that we don't split a parcel. We did that here too for, I forget which lot that is, lot 2 of the Owl Creek subdivision. There was a little corner that was in Brush Creek. And then we're also making a change down here. This kind of chicken head shape here is kind of the north end of the old, or actually it's still the current, but the Castle Creek planning area when it was Castle Maroon Creek combined. And as you know, Maroon Creek split off from Castle Creek and its boundary is shown here. And the new boundary for Castle Creek is shown like this. And so that would leave this little corner isolated from the proposed modified Castle Creek planning area. And so we're suggesting that it be included in the Owl Creek planning area. And that also, fortunately, incorporates a little sliver of the Buttermilk ski area into the Owl Creek planning area, as opposed to dividing it into 2 different planning areas. So this is the existing land use pattern. Majority of the planning areas you see in green here is federal lands or open space lands. The second largest category is residential, which you see here in yellow. That's single family residential, and that's about 40% of the land area, with public open space and public lands being about 45%. There's also 11% of the land which is agricultural, and that is primarily contained in this Owl Creek Meadows property. And then there's a smattering of vacant lots and also some affordable housing parcels also within the planning area. And this blue area is the privately owned portion of the ski area, which under the assessor's parcel data shows up as recreation. That's why it shows as a different color. The crosshatch line that you see here is the ski area boundary, the permit boundary. And you can see that that extends up a little bit into these, I think it's 1 or 2 lots in the West Buttermilk subdivision. And that area is leased to the Ski Co for ski area purposes. And that's why it shows up as residential, but it's got the ski area boundary crossing over into it. These are the subdivisions within the planning area. We have the large Owl Creek Ranch subdivision that has a large open space parcel that is along Owl Creek Road. We have Stapleton lot split. There's also the East Owl Creek subdivision, which contains lots that range from 3 acres to 40 acres in size. And then there's several other smaller splits like Mandalay North, which is I think a 35-acre parcel. There's the Goober family lot split, and that's 2 parcels. And then we have the West Buttermilk Pfister tracts. And most of these are, larger tracts, like 35-acre plus. And then we have the little Eagle Pines subdivision, with a couple of tracks in the middle called Fifield, and we have the Richard Woods lot split in this location. So yeah, there are a few tracks outside of subdivisions that are privately owned, but most of what's outside of the subdivisions is public land or open space. This is a map that shows the current zoning. There really are only 4 zone districts in the planning area. AH are these little parcels that you see here and here and here, and there's one down here. Most of the planning area is zoned AR10, and the other significant zoning area is the LIR 35, which you see here in these beige areas, and then of course the ski rec zone district, which is for the Buttermilk ski area. I will just point out that this ski rec zoning boundary doesn't coincide with the ski permit area. This is something that we've kind of uncovered through the process of looking at, you know, the master plan updates for several actually of the master plan areas. And it's something that's going to be discussed, I think, in Ellen's portion of the discussion, but this is something that we're looking at trying to correct. Here's a quick build-out analysis summary. Again, the private land is roughly 3,100 acres, about 63% of the total planning area is private land. It's about 30% built out. About 9% of the land has been subject to some sort of conservation easement or other restriction preventing it from being further developed. The maximum build-out potential has been reduced by 32 units as a result of those conservation efforts over the years. And the likely remaining build-out, which is what we are typically looking at when we talk about build-out for a planning area, a master plan area, is 83 units. So this planning area has a interesting water and sewer districts overlap. We've got the Buttermilk Metro District, we've got the Aspen Consolidated Sanitation District, and we've got the City of Aspen's water service area. And the Buttermilk Metro District and the City of Aspen districts serve differing areas, except for the fact that they overlap in the area of the Eagle Pines subdivision, which is here, and you can see that it's kind of a darker color there, and that shows that overlap. The Buttermilk Metro District serves the Owl Creek Ranch, Eagle Pines, and East Owl Creek subdivisions, as well as West Buttermilk Pfister Tracts and that Woods lot split parcels, which are here. And then the City of Aspen area covers the lower portion of the Buttermilk ski area and a portion of 2 service areas that overlap, or I should say, I've already said that we have this overlap here at the Eagle Pines. So there is elk and significant elk and mule deer habitat in this area. The large green area that you see is an elk production area, and you see these 2 reddish or orange looking tones. One of those is a highway crossing and the other one is a migration corridor. And this is a critical migration corridor between this elk production area and the elk winter range and severe winter range habitats that are to the north. So this is a very significant wildlife habitat area. And it also accompanies during the spring migrations, a lot of people parked by the side of the road looking for the animals that are crossing the road, and they're sometimes illegally parked and creating some interesting problems. So that is a kind of a little snapshot of the existing conditions. I do have the other maps queued up, and I have the plan itself and the existing conditions report queued up, Ellen, if you need to have us switch to that at any point in the discussion tonight.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Right, so as Tim said, the initial Owl Creek plan was adopted in 2003. And this master plan update includes some stations that have been carried forward from that 2003 plan without change. And then there are other sections, recommendations that are new to this plan. And so recommendations for new or expanded policies include the section under the natural environment heading. We're looking at climate change preparedness, water conservation, protections for wildlife, and preservation of dark skies as some of those changes. And then relating to transportation and infrastructure, there's some changes, mostly consistent recommendations, but some changes to road management, speed limit enforcement, and managing vehicle traffic related to wildlife migration patterns. And I'm going to go into some detail here in the next several slides. There's a section on growth and land use that existed in the 2003 plan. And the changes here, let's see, I've got to read this, right? With the exception of private land zoned, okay, so this first bullet is a recommendation for some changes to zoning, and this was carried forward from the 2003 plan. Basically, it's recommending that with some exceptions, the AR10 zone district and private lands identified here be rezoned to the LIR 35-acre zone district, basically to provide some consistency with the existing land use patterns. That recommendation was in the 2003 plan and has been carried forward, and also exists in some of the other caucus master plans that we've reviewed and adopted recently.
What is LIR 35 zoning?
It's low impact residential zoning, so it has a conservation component to it, but it's large lot residential zoning. And then again, the second bullet is carried forward from the 2003 plan, recommendation to continue to allow Owl Creek to be a receiver site for TDRs. As you know, there are some larger homes in the Owl Creek master plan area, and so the recommendation is to allow the master plan area to be a receiver site for TDRs to exceed the residential growth management exemption at 750 square feet that exists today, up to the current maximum county floor area limit of 9,250 square feet, recognizing that those numbers may change through future code amendments. A new recommendation that's been added is a recommendation to prohibit any new use of residential properties as primarily commercial short-term rental licensed properties. And this is a recommendation that has been made in other master plan updates recently, and and added to this plan to be consistent with some of those other plans. And then the final bullet is a recommendation again that we carried over from other master plan updates in the rural areas that have recently been adopted, basically recommending that land use regulations be revised to allow house size to be varied depending on visibility from public roads. And this is something that we've talked about with the Castle Creek Caucus. I believe it may have also been discussed as part of the Maroon Creek master plan update recently. So basically to acknowledge that perhaps there should be some options to vary house size, smaller or larger, depending on how visible it is, given the real focus on scenic quality in these rural areas and consistency with rural character. So these next two bullets, still relating to residential development, are bullets that are the result of conversations with the Buttermilk Metro District. Basically, the first bullet actually is carried forward from the 2003 master plan, but it's ensuring that all land use applications in this area served by the Buttermilk Metro District submit a plan for water use to the district to ensure sufficient capacity. As you know, capacity for these districts is more and more of a concern and issue. The Brush Creek master plan was really dialed in on this particular issue. And then the Metro District also is encouraging domestic water conservation and reduction of exterior water consumption. And this should be something we should look at moving forward when we review land use applications. So the next slide.
Should we ask questions as you go along if we have questions about a specific area? I'll remember.
Yeah, actually, why don't there are a lot of slides, but it would be great if you can remember and come back, that would be great. On the non-residential side of things, the first bullet is a carry forward from 2003, modify zoning to prohibit new commercial uses. And this is really reflective of current county policy in the rural area and is contained within several of the rural area master plans. And the second bullet also is a carryover from, I believe it was in the 2003 plan and exists in several of the other master plans recently updated. And it's a recommendation to rezone those public lands, the primarily federal lands that you see in that dark green color on the map to the left there. Rezone those public lands to the RSG, Resource Government Zone District, to preclude residential development and reflect resource conservation on those lands. This was the resource government zone was established to basically to recognize that some of those public lands periodically have been the subject of exchange, public land exchanges in the past. And this was basically to be a step ahead of that kind of condition, to basically say, yeah, okay, if there is an exchange, let's preserve the resource conservation use that those lands were intended for. Now, I think you saw some public comments that we received from the Aspen Skiing Company. They were submitted yesterday afternoon. And one of the comments they made relative to this specific recommendation was that if there are any public lands that fall within the Buttermilk ski area permit boundary, and if you look on the map, there are actually some public lands that are within the permit boundary area there. We request that those be rezoned to ski rec rather than resource government because they are within a ski area permit boundary. Seems like a reasonable request to me. It's not currently in the draft, but seems as though if the planning commission is comfortable with that, pretty easily included. Next slide. Okay, so affordable housing. This first bullet identifies recommendations that, again, most of these are carried forward from the 2003 master plan. And most of these reflect current county policy in the land use code as it relates to affordable housing. So the plan supports discouraging affordable housing outside of the existing urban growth boundaries, with the exception of citizen housing, primarily caretaker dwelling units outside of the UGB, which may be acceptable where density is appropriate for the surrounding areas and development is containable. And that language is taken from the current land use policy. Staff has added, again, for consistency with specifically with the recently adopted Brush Creek Master Plan, we've added 3 recommendations to update this a little bit. we've recommended, that there be enforcement of the use of caretaker dwelling units for affordable housing so that they don't sit vacant or so that they aren't used for other purposes. Support deed restricted on-site job-related housing on working ranches, and this came from deliberations on the Cozy Point Ranch, in Brush Creek, and recognizing that there are circumstances where that is absolutely appropriate, and encourage the purchase and buy down of existing free market units to promote housing goals without increasing growth rates or impacting rural character. And this is something that the county is actually considering actively pursuing, and it's something that the Western Regional Housing Group is also looking at as an opportunity. Aspen Skiing Company also submitted in their comment letter yesterday a suggestion that there should be some acknowledgement of the fact that large homes, and there are some of those in the Owl Creek Master Plan area, also generate some employees based on the need for management and services. And that should be acknowledged, and that there should be some recommendation in the plan to acknowledge that employment generation and allow for some on-site affordable housing to mitigate those large home employment generation needs. And so two responses to that. One is that the affordable housing policy for the county as a whole is going to be thoroughly vetted in response to recommendations in the Community Growth Advisory Committee report as part of the Vision 2050 project and the comprehensive plan update, recognizing that affordable housing is an issue that the community as a whole is grappling with. And so we do need to look at the affordable housing need as it relates to in the big picture for the community as a whole. And we will be doing that in the coming months. Nonetheless, if the Planning and Zoning Commission would like to add language to respond to the Aspen Skiing Company's recommendation that there be some acknowledgement of the affordable housing generated by large homes, and recognizing the need perhaps to accommodate for some affordable housing in the master plan area to respond to that employment generation, that is an option that we should consider, and we can either provide some language if you're comfortable with that, if you want to add something tonight, or if need be, we can continue the public hearing to come back with some language that is satisfactory to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm guessing we're going to have some questions on this, but I'll try to get through the whole presentation if that works, and come back. So the next slide, on agriculture, the first bullet again is carried forward from the 2003 plan with some fundamental direction to conserve agricultural lands for obvious purposes: environmental, cultural, open space, visual and economic value, and to secure water rights to maintain agriculture, open space, and wildlife habitat. There are two new recommendations. One is again carried forward from other master plans that we've recently updated. One is to support environmentally sustainable local food production to help reduce our community food footprint. And two, to encourage agricultural producers to reduce irrigation water waste by implementing best management practices. As you saw from the comments that we got from the East Owl Creek Subdivision Homeowners Association representative, who is here tonight, there was a concern expressed about additional regulation on historic use of ditches for irrigation. And I want to reiterate that the language in the plan does not suggest any more restrictive or regulatory approach on the county's part with respect to addressing the historic use of irrigation water. It simply encourages best management practices to alleviate waste. And as a practical matter, the county has limited ability to regulate ditch use. So, yeah, just that's one response to the concern expressed by the homeowners association, and the planning commission may want to weigh in on that as well. So next slide, on open space, recreation and tourism, again, all three of these recommendations are carried forward from the 2003 plan. Basically, support for collaborative efforts on management of public lands is one. And there's always been a lot of support for continued public use of the Owl Creek Nordic Trail, Nordic and Bike Trail. There was a while there where I don't believe the conservation easement was in effect, and I believe it is now. Or the trail easement, I should say. No, it's still not. Okay. Okay, so there's always concern about losing the benefit that trail provides, the Owl Creek Trail specifically for winter use, I think specifically. And then there's also a recommendation to provide education to the public regarding the safety and courtesy issues associated with bicyclists and other users of recreational trails. And we're hearing this throughout the county, right? Because we have so many people using our trails. And so it's something clear, and I think there continues to be efforts to move in that direction. There are real concerns about primarily safety concerns associated with the bicycle use on these trails in particular. Next slide. There's also a recommendation, again carried forward, for coordination with the caucus regarding future planning efforts for the Buttermilk ski area. And my understanding is that Aspen Skiing Company is contemplating an update to the Buttermilk Ski Rec Master Plan, County Master Plan, in the relatively near future. So there may be a need to move forward with this recommendation, in particular in the shorter term. So scenic quality, again, these concerns have been carried forward from the 2003 plan with some additions. There's always been support for preservation of scenic quality. The map on the left there shows that almost the entire Owl Creek caucus area or master plan area is within a scenic view protection area. And going to the last bullet, there's always been a request for maintenance and enforcement of up-to-date lighting standards. And the middle bullet speaks to protecting night skies. And that's something that the community has been supporting more and more in the recent discussions, and something that I think is going to be pursued in several different areas. On the lighting standards, I dropped in that lower photograph just to make you aware, if you're not already aware, of the fact that the county is in fact updating, doing a lighting code amendment. And that's going to be coming to you in the relatively near future. I don't think it's been scheduled yet on your agenda, but we've done some public outreach, and I think that's going to be a really positive improvement to the lighting standards. Sorry?
That's an X Games picture. I live in Snowmass, and that's what it looks like at the X Games.
That picture was
white. I would say it's the X Games.
I believe that photograph was taken by one of our staff. Is that Ann Driggers?
And it may
Yeah.
have been to
You guys,
demonstrate,
top of Sky
yeah,
Park,
to demonstrate
like that,
how
my house.
how
the X Games.
impactful that is.
Yeah.
X Games.
right. And apparently there've been some great, presentations on the issue of night skies and the need for addressing, lighting, that really interferes with those night skies, protection of the night skies. So a lot of movement forward on that front. As far as enforcement of lighting standards, enforcement is pursued on a complaint basis, and we do our best to respond, given staff capacity. We hear the need expressed for enforcement and continue to respond to our best ability, right?
Who responds to that specifically?
We,
Sorry, enforcement,
yeah,
Chad Abraham, I mean, our code enforcement officer. They go out and do night lighting inspections and you know, go out and, yeah, but it's complaint driven.
Yeah.
and we do have one, right? Do we have more than one enforcement person on staff? So we recognize. Yeah, we recognize the need, but it's a, you can imagine, enforcement, for lighting on roads, for special, there's a lot of ground to cover, and that's not an excuse. But it is a need and we recognize it, so. The next slide on scenic quality, again, in the letter we received from the Aspen Skiing Company, they asked that something be added to the scenic quality section of the plan. This is something that was added to or contemplated for addition to the Castle Creek Master Plan, East of Aspen Master Plan, both of which you will be seeing in the next several months. And I think it was also discussed as part of the Maroon Creek Master Plan, which was updated. And that is the fact that the Buttermilk ski area lies within this master plan area. And as a practical matter, there are practical operational features associated with the ski area that by their nature are going to have a visual impact. And those operational features include ski lifts and towers. And the skiing company has asked us to acknowledge the fact that those are an element that exists within any ski area, and to have something in the plan that acknowledges that those are visual impacts that are basically inherent and acceptable based on the fact that they are necessary as part of operation of a ski area. So they've requested that this language, basically the last bullet there be included. Well, it would be a combination of these three bullets as an addition to the scenic quality section of the master plan. To be fair, we received this letter from Aspen Skiing Company yesterday afternoon, and the Owl Creek residents who have participated in this master plan review have not had a chance to see this recommendation. So they're hearing it for the first time tonight, and for those who are on screen.
So when will they be able to ingest it and comment on it
Well, that
in an educated, a thoughtful way?
in a thoughtful way. Well, the one option is for the planning commission to make a decision tonight and say, you know what, this seems reasonable and we'd like to just incorporate it in the plan. Another option is to say, you know what, we'd like to give them others in the Owl Creek area, residents who are interested in participating in this plan review, some time to digest, and you can continue the public hearing to a date certain and provide that opportunity if that's how you'd like to move forward. And again, this seems like a fairly, given the fact that a ski area exists in this master plan area. this doesn't seem like an unreasonable request, but to be fair, the residents have not had a chance to look at it, so. The next slide, speaks to air quality, and, this is a new section, surprisingly, but really doesn't, include anything, surprising here. Our recommendation to strengthen regulations associated with construction activities and to encourage the use of existing transit service and facilities and the development and use of alternative energy vehicles. So water quality and quantity, some of this is carried forward and some of this has been added. These recommendations basically support preservation and protection of water resources and high water quality. No surprise, there's a recommendation to ensure adequate quantity for residential and agricultural use. And given the fact that drought is something that is imminent and something we need to be really prepared for, there's a recommendation added to manage water to reduce potential for drought and develop strategies in the event of drought to address potable water supply, wildfire potential, forest health, the local regional recreation and tourist economy, fisheries and agriculture. And I only read those verbatim because they're all really critical elements to resiliency here in our local area. There's also a recommendation to maintain vibrant, healthy rivers, outstanding water quality in the Roaring Fork River and Colorado River Basin. I think this was carried forward, and also to participate in water court proceedings as warranted to protect water quality in the Colorado River Basin. I think we don't have too many more slides. There has been a new section added to all of the plans we're updating relating to climate change and resiliency. On the right side of the screen, there are some actions basically intended to support the objectives identified by the Board of County Commissioners in their climate emergency resolution and climate action plans, and also supported more recently by the Community Growth Advisory Committee to take action on climate. And so these actions on the right side of the screen are a few of the recommendations in the plan. One you've seen recently a lot: reduce annual greenhouse gas emissions by 90% from 2020 levels by 2050. Work towards a net zero energy use, encourage installation of renewable energy technologies, and work towards the diversion of construction and demolition waste and debris from the Pickens County Solid Waste Center, and continually support and develop regional mass transit efforts and transportation solutions. As I said, this is not a complete list. It's a very thorough list of recommendations that we've carried forward from, as I said, from other master plans recently updated, and we anticipate doing a lot more work on this particular topic as part of the 2050 vision work moving forward. The next slide is focused on wildfire as part of that climate change direction. Again, because wildfire is such an imminent threat and danger, there's a little bit of focus here just in this slide to identify recommendations. Two that we've heard about from our emergency management people over recent years. One is to encourage planning area residents to proactively engage in self-support measures to ensure their own safety in the event of wildfire, but also to develop a community evacuation plan to prepare for a wildfire event or other natural or man-made disaster that may exist or occur, and encourage wildfire resistant buildings, landscaping, and finally create defensible spaces. So again, Jeffrey Woodruff did submit some comments. I think he may be coming to the meeting late. He had another commitment. But he did send me some comments today, and had one or two recommendations for additions to the wildfire section, as you might imagine, given his activity on this front. So, but fairly cursory, and I can actually, well, I can convey those as part of his comments when we get to your comments, if that seems reasonable. Finally, there are more actions under this section. Basically relating to water supply is really critical for resiliency, and the need to address flood, and also economic resiliency, the ability to bounce back, to manage for and bounce back in the event of natural disasters. So then moving on to a subject that definitely is something that has been front and center in terms of the comments we've received from a few individuals in the Owl Creek area, roads, traffic, and safety. Neither of the two bullets in the top of the screen here are new. They are carried forward, but there's a real emphasis on the need to maintain rural character and safety for residents and those traveling on the Owl Creek Road. We have heard stories of people, well, one, speeding is definitely a concern. Apparently the speed limit is set at a reasonable speed, but again, there's not enough enforcement. And there's a concern about people stopping on Owl Creek Road because of that elk habitat that you saw on the screen and the elk herd that exists in the area. Apparently a lot of people stop to view the elk herd, which is amazing. And they also stop apparently on occasion to visit with the horses on private property, sometimes actually put their kids on the horses for selfies. I'm not quite sure why, but so there's a real concern about not only the safety associated with those kinds of stops, but also some illegal parking and blockage of driveways and the like. So there's a request for not only enforcement, but also perhaps some signage help from the county. And so that is partly what's behind this first bullet. And then there's also a real concern, and this is carried forward, that Owl Creek Road does not become the primary access to the town of Snowmass Village. For the reasons you'd expect, the additional traffic primarily being the primary concern, and impacts, those associated impacts to those living along Owl Creek Road. On the transit front, this is also carried forward from the 2003 plan. Basically, it's reiterating the need to keep Brush Creek Road as the primary transit corridor for access to the town of Snowmass Village, with recognizing that there may be a need for temporary use of Owl Creek Road for transit in the event that Brush Creek Road is not passable. And
Once we paved it, we changed everything.
well, clearly there were issues with before it was paved, but I think the residents still feel as though that the impacts of having transit on the road would still be significant in terms of noise, perhaps, odors, and additional traffic. So that is their concern. This is not a new recommendation. I did speak with RAFTA about it, and they said, yep, we're familiar with it, we remember it. And at this point, we don't have any plans to use Owl Creek Road for more than a temporary access, and then if there is a need. as a practical matter, again, when we look at the comprehensive plan and the Vision 2050 work ahead, it may be that at some point there will be a greater community need to consider transit alternatives. And in the event that there is a greater community need, there may be a different direction taken at some point. But this is where we are today, and this continues to be the recommendation. And RAFTA at this point has no plans to make a change. At the same time, there's a recommendation to support affordable, efficient mass transit and multimodal transportation connectivity to pedestrian and bicycle trail systems. Then finally, there's a recommendation, again, this is carried forward, to involve the caucus in discussions in the event that a buttermilk to Snowmass gondola connection is proposed. And I don't know how many of you were here. I think Suzanne Caskey, you may have been, when there was at one point a discussion about a gondola connection between Buttermilk and Snowmass, and that was a long story, but Jeffrey Woodruff has suggested that maybe there could be stronger language included, basically saying, you know, that the caucus doesn't actually actively support this kind of a gondola connection of this sort. So,
Or even stronger than it doesn't.
or even stronger, and that's something that the planning commission may want to consider, because again, this has ramifications that go beyond the Owl Creek Caucus master plan area, right? And yeah, I don't want to get too sidetracked there, but it's an important conversation to be had for sure. The next slide, I think we just have two more slides here, speaks to the water utility. Here, again, some of these recommendations, which are kind of hard, sorry for the small print here, are carried forward from the existing plan. In fact, the first four bullets are forwarded. One is to limit utility extensions as a whole outside of the urban growth boundary, and to ensure that water district expansion doesn't result in or encourage urbanization, urban scale densities or development. And then this third bullet is carried forward, and it's basically saying, hey, for properties not included within the metro district, we should be requiring shared water systems for new development and require a hydrologic analysis as part of the subdivision or development review to prove that an adequate, reliable water source exists for the development proposed. So that's something that's carried forward, as is the following bullet, which is to say that water rights for irrigation on historically irrigated properties should continue to be used for that purpose, for agricultural purposes. The last bullet is something that was requested by the Buttermilk Metro District, basically to require adherence to the City of Aspen's drought mitigation and response plan, which was adopted in 2020. I'm not sure I have that right. To lower exterior water demand for landscape irrigation and exterior water amenities like pools, ponds, water features, spas, and development and implementation of water conservation measures aligned with Aspen's water efficiency plan adopted in 2023 and the Buttermilk Metro District's conservation measures, which include in-house water conservation and exterior water demand reduction. So sorry for the long paragraph there and read, but this again is consistent with some of the recommendations that we've received from the Community Growth Advisory Committee on really looking at exterior water amenities and water.
Didn't the county just pass something stronger than this? I mean, within the past few weeks, having to do with outdoor use of water, irrigation?
Not water.
not
Within the energy coaches, just.
Energy
Yeah,
code,
right, yeah, the
yes.
city has a very involved review process related to if you're on city water.
And as a practical matter, the Buttermilk Buttermilk Metro District, has an agreement with the city of Aspen for some of their water, provisions. So they are tied to the city of Aspen for supply. So this was added, at their request. And then finally, there's as part of the Aspen Skiing Company's recommendation, in their letter submitted yesterday, they have requested the addition of a recommendation on telecommunication infrastructure. This recommendation was developed for inclusion in the Castle Creek Master Plan, and it relates both to the need for infrastructure, but also recognizing the potential for the visual impacts associated with that infrastructure, given the need for line of sight transmission. Basically, they would like to add something that says, seek to establish reliable and affordable broadband service within the caucus area. This is something that the Castle Creek Caucus is pursuing in their master plan update, which you will see in the relatively near future. But that service, that infrastructure relies on line of sight transmission. So there is a visual aspect associated with it. Given that, Aspen Skiing Company is requesting that line of sight transmission element, suggesting that be recognized in the master plan as a potential element associated with broadband service provision to the area. So again, another recommendation that they've made. And again, the caucus has not had, or residents of the Owl Creek area have not had a chance to review that recommendation. So the planning commission may believe that, yeah, this is totally appropriate and we'd like to go ahead and add it regardless, or you may want to pause to give the residents an opportunity to weigh in. And you have a few Owl Creek residents in the room, and I know we have at least one online, so they may want to weigh in as part of public comment this evening, and that may resolve issues or not. So to the next slide, questions, and then I'll jump to the next slide before we go back to questions. At this point, staff is recommending that you take action to approve the resolution before you tonight. But let's go back to questions first, and that will probably help determine whether you're ready to take action or not. So let's go to questions. I hope you were able to jot them down and remember them. Oh, no.
So if you want to go, if you're trying to remember, so please.
Okay, one that, are these clarifying questions only right now? Or
Any question you'd like to ask?
comments?
Comments, questions? Yeah,
I have a lot of concern about the idea of using TDRs to enlarge homes when it just can't be seen because of my last year, the full year experience, the privilege of sitting in on the growth committee meetings. And it became very clear to me, and you just can't ignore it anymore, that it's not what it looks like. It's all of the enormous outcomes on growth. I mean, the extra the larger the house gets, the more and more intensive its uses are, the higher the traffic levels, the more everything, if you can use it, they use more of it. And so and especially because the I know that the growth committee recommendations and recently the Board of County Commissioners with the 9,000 or 9,250 or whatever limit. For me, it's way too soon to start undermining that because there's so many reasons not to undermine it.
So the recommendation in the plan, if I may, Zach, is
Oh, boy.
there's one recommendation in the plan to continue to allow Owl Creek to be a receiving site for TDRs up to the maximum that allowed today, which is 9,250, or as may be modified in the future.
Yeah, however, there's the other one that
That suggested,
that is
yeah,
taking that as a receiving area and making the house size therefore much more flexible.
so there was, and that's why this is my clarifying question. There's also a recommendation that there be a code amendment to, allow house size to be varied based on its visual impact from the road. So I think it's the second recommendation that you're objecting to clearly. I don't know if you're also objecting just to the recommendation that the Owl Creek area continue to be a receiving site for TDRs in whatever iteration they take in the future.
House size is very important to me.
Mhm.
It's critical to me after spending that year watching
Right?
29 citizens
Mhm.
give up half their lives
Right.
to work on those. So I would not be in favor of that.
Of the
I'm saying that you can vary
Okay.
beyond the limits.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's point well taken. I don't know how the rest of the planning commissioners feel about that, but,
Yes, one of the other things I had written down is very house size based on visibility. My question is above 9,250, and I'm gonna say no.
Nothing would, we wouldn't allow that, so I'm looking at that same language right now and wondering if there's other provisions in the code that I would say it's more, is it allowing us to say, hey, that's really visible, so we wouldn't
Go either
allow it,
way.
maybe even go up to 9,250. Nothing would allow you to exceed 9,250 today. So it wouldn't read that way, but I guess I'm wondering if that's really the intent of the language was more, can we use visual impact to reduce a house size? Which is not really a tool we use in the code today. It's more, how can you mitigate that versus actually saying that's so visible, maybe you should just reduce the size.
So I
So
think
that's maybe the way it's a little different
it's very different.
read
Yeah,
of that
because if
language.
what the caucus is saying, I'm assuming that you worked with a caucus.
I can tell you that this recommendation was generated initially, as I recall, in discussion with the Castle Creek caucus. I think primarily they were thinking, hey, if you can't see it from the road, perhaps it could be bigger. And at the time, we weren't talking about, what the extent of bigger meant. But as drafted, as recommended, it could go either way. If the county were to adopt such a code amendment, it could be used in theory to say, and I think the Castle Creek caucus recognized this, that it could also be used to say, hey, you are right on the road. And 5750 is
And
too
I can
big.
see that if what the
Right.
caucus has said in working on all of this is we want to be able to say that something is too visible and it's outside of the character of the
Mhm.
master plan that
Mhm.
we've worked so hard on. I can see that, but I can't see it as justification for allowing a larger house anywhere.
It was the Castle Creek caucus that, and it may have been Maroon Creek initially, but those were the two caucuses that discussed this concept. And we dropped it into this plan
Yeah.
because
I
it
get
was
now.
to
I
be
was just
consistent,
reading.
but it could cut both ways, and I think that was the intention was to say, hey, if you can't see it, maybe it can go bigger, but if you can, it's really not in character and we want to see it go smaller. So, yeah. So I don't know if,
My concern is nothing about 9250.
oh, yeah.
I think that needs to be very clear.
That would be
And the
great.
second one is I can understand the concern about, it's too visible and we want, it needs to be less. But that just seems to open the door to a lot of potential abuse and, argument and lawsuits and, yeah, your house is too visible. And so it can only be 5750 and 9250 is allowed. And so I think that it just makes it potentially creates problems
Mhm.
and you're in at the enforcement end. I understand, I would agree with the concept that keeping it below if it's too visible, but I think that it needs to be very clear that it's not making it, not allowing it above the max square footage. That's not the intent. It's potentially bringing it low.
And or if you think this would be just too difficult that it would be difficult to adopt an amendment that would be functional and enforceable, then you can say that, there are too many variables here and we don't like the recommendation and it should be removed.
If the caucus is interested in creating, I guess it is the caucus master plan, but if the caucus wants to be able to say, hey, we want approval on, big ugly houses that are visible, that's reasonable. And the neighbors are gonna say this, that's the architectural review kind of almost. But so that's, as I say, that my concern is enforcement, but I can understand the concern and support it, that you don't want a big ugly house right in the road.
I can tell you that the recommendation was generated by the Castle Creek and I believe the Maroon Creek caucuses. And I did not receive any specific response from the residents in Owl Creek with specific to this recommendation. So I can't.
But what we've demonstrated here
Mhm.
is that it apparently can be read two ways.
Right.
And I think Doug, I agree with Doug that if it's below 9250,
Mhm.
fine. But I think that the neighbors ought to be able to say it's ugly, but that's too much where it is. Maybe that means we just end up getting bigger berms.
Well,
along the way.
that's what I was gonna, my comment is. Define too close to the road. What's our definition of that? Because a 20,000 square foot house can be 8 miles off the road with no architectural berming or no landscape design or no trees. And you can see it looks like a giant hotel, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you drive up Castle Creek,
Right.
there's that one building that it looks like it could be Highlands Base Village.
From space, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so,
And indeed.
and that's across the valley, and so that's not right even next to the road. There's no definition on like, what's close to the road, what's visual. And then I have one other, I'm gonna kind of play devil's advocate a little bit here because if we start blocking off or inhibiting all the places where TDRs can land, there is the trade-off where those TDRs come from, let's just say the backside of Ashland Mountain, where we're able to extinguish building rights on a huge area that is very pristine wilderness. The trade-off is that those TDRs have to create that area on the, let's just say, wherever it is. Those TDRs have to land somewhere. And Owl Creek is historically been an area that has like a very large building size. So if they were gonna land somewhere, between and Red Mountain or Starwood or, that's where they end up. So that's just playing devil's advocate a little bit, like, cause if we start extinguishing all the areas where TDRs can land due to, then we can't create, you lose the opportunity to create more areas and give people TDRs because there's no market for it. And then my last comment was, we do have to note, just so everyone knows, there is an area, and I remember this from a meeting a year ago.
Mhm.
There is an area within this Owl Creek master plan area,
Mhm.
Eagle Pines, that does have a pre-existing agreement with the
Sure.
county where they are not capped by any building size. From 9250, 5520, they're allowed everyone correct me if I'm wrong, in perpetuity. They're allowed, I don't, when's the perpetuity? They have some existing agreement with the county where they're allowed to build up to 15,000 square feet.
I don't remember if that one was 15, I think maybe it's 11.
11, so
They have a-
there's,
like a legal
so just so everyone knows,
Yeah.
the 9650 or the
22.
all of 92, none of that pertain, there's an area within this master plan area that these rules don't apply anyways, and that there are gonna be extremely larger than average homes there anyways.
And I think to clarify, I mean, these action items could continue to allow to be a
Yeah.
receiving site. The code today, both Owl Creek Ranch and East Owl Creek are designated receiver sites for TDRs. They don't have to go through special review.
Yeah.
They're allowed to use them up to 9250 now,
Right.
that's capped. There are homes obviously that already exceed that, you know, so I mean,
Right.
that's a different, but just, I mean, so I think this is just saying. This is still an area where we're okay for people to use TDRs, but there is a new
Yeah,
cap,
like you can land
Um,
one, but not
right?
two.
Right.
Yeah,
There is a new cap and that even may change, but, sorry, Suzanne, I thought.
Yeah,
Go
no, the other
ahead.
piece, I think, just on the visibility piece, I mean, I'm not sure, I think if you struck number 2 from the code, that
Yeah.
it's not gonna change anything. I mean, again, what we do under the code today. I mean, anybody who's building out there, it's gonna go through site plan review and we're gonna apply our scenic standards. Which are from public roads, not between property owners.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And again, right, if somebody's coming in with a massive landscape change to address neighbor views, we also review for that in the scenic impact from the, you know, the public view plane, so.
And what is the
Um,
protection for the caucus? If something comes along that they think is it had, any application has to go to the caucus first, doesn't it?
It gets referred to the caucus, but I mean, essentially, and Ellen has reached out, I mean, there isn't really, this isn't an organized caucus at this point in time. I mean, Ellen's done a really good job of reaching out to a lot of the homeowners and the associations and whatnot, but there isn't so much of a, like other areas where we have a very organized and involved caucus. We may still send, refer things out to the caucus, but that's not the entity that we're getting comments back from.
Yeah, there is a formally recognized Owl Creek caucus, but it's not really, for all intents and purposes, it's not functioning as a caucus right now. We've gotten a lot of great feedback just from from homeowners association and individuals, at this point, and the skiing company who has an obvious interest in the area. So protects, but we do refer those applications to the Owl Creek caucus, and in theory, hopefully those referrals go to some of those individuals and homeowners associations for response and input.
would you guys like to take public comment right now?
Jasmine is on the line. I don't know if she.
Oh, yeah.
No comments?
And I have a couple of more questions,
Yeah.
if I can go ahead. As far as the ski company's request to rezone the ski rec, makes perfect sense. I would
Mhm.
agree, as well as the visual aspects for the ski rec area. I would say absolutely no to cell towers without approval of the caucus. And the cell towers to me is not the same as broadband access. Broadband access is the internet to the ground.
Yeah.
That's how I get it. Cell towers is cell phone driving down Owl Creek Road. I would say no. If the caucus wants to allow it, that's another issue. The same with the Buttermilk to Snowmass gondola. Once again, that's not a ski company thing. That wants to be the caucus thing. So I would say no, that we don't want to allow them to say that we can put towers up without the caucus or the county or whoever says. But not saying their blanket approval that says ski area rec allows towers. I'm all for that.
Mhm.
Not all for that. Cell towers and gondola that's outside the ski area boundary. You know, as far as road usage on Owl Creek Road, in my opinion, that's gonna be driven entirely by TOSB, and we don't have any control out there. You know, place we build the town, so that's the.
Say that again, sorry, I missed it.
As far as much about the traffic on Owl Creek Road,
Mhm.
driven by how much gets built at Snowmass and taking kind of in control. Unfortunately.
Why doesn't Pickens County have any control?
This town of Snowmass Village is its own independent community, and they can approve as much as they want.
And and the route?
Well, you know, I live in Snowmass. You know, Brush Creek Road gets busy, and that's when people drive Owl Creek Road. And the more buildings they build in Snowmass, the more traffic they put on Brush Creek Road, the more it's gonna go Owl Creek.
Mhm.
But like overflow.
Overflow,
Yeah.
yeah, extent, you know. And that's just,
In,
that's the way I see it.
yeah. And RAFTA doesn't currently have any routes that use that or that use Owl Creek Road at all. Like, never.
I don't believe they do, no. Again, I did discuss it with them and at the moment, they don't have any plans to, use Owl Creek for transit, but, you know, that could change.
What would it take, what would keep Owl Creek Road from being doubled in width? Or half again in wide?
You know, all I can say is that the road we have, gosh, is it the asset management plan now, Suzanne? We don't have a road management plan, but it is identified at a certain standard, I don't know if it's a,
I was gonna say, I don't think I would even try
Yeah.
to answer that. I mean, we'd have to have, the county engineer
yeah,
address what right of way do we have there? Obviously they maintain it to accommodate a certain level of like how they manage all of that would definitely be a realm that that they would delve into that.
Well, I was
I
just
would have
thinking
that.
that was what Doug was saying, that the more Snowmass Village, the town of Snowmass Village expands and creates the need for growth outside of that, as on Owl Creek Road, is there a point that we would get to where people would then say, oh, well, it's too crowded now, and transit's not doing it, so now we have to.
I mean, the county commissioners are always gonna have the authority over the piece of, of the Owl Creek Road that's within our jurisdiction. So, right, I mean, any change to or request, like, other than, with the issues with traffic and whatnot, what is it the county can do to mitigate that? Is sort of more what I'm thinking in terms of, we're dumping so much more traffic. Would the county consider, I mean, clearly there'd be a huge public process surrounding that and how much right of way we have to even accommodate
Yes.
an expansion. That those are all the pieces I don't know.
and I would add to that, while the county, may not have a really huge enforcement presence on Owl Creek Road for speed, to address speed concerns. Tim Malloy did speak with G.R. Fielding when he was the county engineer earlier on as part of this process. And apparently the county does regularly monitor the traffic on Owl Creek Road. It is one of the roads that they actually pretty consistently monitor for traffic. So I think there is some understanding of the existing traffic and capacity, and the county is keeping an eye on that. Where that goes, to be determined. But Suzanne's right, that ultimately would be a decision something to be looked at by the Board of County Commissioners, and I assume that the Owl Creek residents would, I shouldn't speak for them, but based on the conversations I've had to date, would be vehemently oppose that kind of improvement.
But I think like when it was, the decision was made to pave Owl Creek Road, that was
Right.
a decision of the Board of County Commissioners.
What year was that?
I'm guessing you all remember, but,
can't remember the year, but
yeah.
Used to be 15 years, does that sound right?
I would say 20.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
And then my last point was, I think that it said that something like 38% of the total, well, there's the amount of development currently in the
Mhm,
area is about 35, 30, 40, less than 40.
30%.
mhm.
Right, somewhere in that range. And so that means that potentially there's a more than doubling of what's there today. And so then there was the thing about the shared water systems,
Mhm.
right? And so where the additional development can happen, I don't understand. Is it in those big Fister parcels that are, didn't understand. But anyway, I think the shared water system thing probably helps control that build out
Mhm.
as opposed to drilling wells. So I think that's a good thing. It needs to be, that was on there, that had been bought from, the Salt Metro District. Is the Salt Metro District, it provides water so that the individual homes in the east of Owl Creek and Owl Creek Ranch are on a shared system or on the wells. So can you,
We're a buttermilk,
you're
we're buttermilk water.
buttermilk water, so it's a
Sure.
shared, it's a system, it's not a well.
No, we went off the wells.
Yeah,
And is that the same? with
15 years ago.
Owl Creek Ranch?
15 years, yeah.
Right.
So it's a big system.
Yeah, it's at the end of the runway is where they have
Oh,
their
right.
pump
Yeah, yeah.
station down
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I worked on that project and then, because that's when everybody used to be on a well, I think, and then everybody had backflow preventers and then
Yeah.
they ran that pump station there, and then there's a storage tank, like as you go up to the West Buttermilk parking lot and go around there, there's a
Yeah.
storage tank there, but, and I guess, you know, obviously that system, when they put it in 15 years ago, they spec'd it out for, you know, a certain capacity and a growth curve, and they've already exceeded that. From what I can gather, you know, from the Metro District, that this system that's only 15 years old is already having some, you know, the growth is limited, or it's limiting growth, that's what I should say.
I think there are still some properties that are, on well systems, they're not included in the Metro District or covered by the Aspen,
I would
district.
say that I think that the shared water system comment that was, I don't know whether it's a recommendation or a part of it or however, but I think that is a important piece that should be included. Allowing, you know, individual pieces to be, individual wells, but the shared system, it makes it a little more difficult to get it all approved. And I guess the last piece was, I understand now low impact residential 35, that's a house on 35 acres, I would guess, and you're talking about zoning everything that's AR 10 into LIR 35 as well. And so is that essentially a down zoning, because if you can go from 10-acre parcels to 35-acre parcels?
Yes, that would be considered to be a down zoning.
And then the existing parcels that are on 10-acre parcels, they're grandfathered in, so it's not an issue for them. But it potentially decreases this amount that can essentially ever be built, this additional 60%, 70%, whatever that number is. Because there's only 30% built now, so that number could potentially be, yeah, it'd be.
Yeah. In theory, that changed zoning would decrease the development potential.
Right, for the 10,
Right.
40-acre lot becomes 135, not 410s.
And there are still some large acreages
That's
out there, yeah, so, that aren't constrained by previous, subdivision approvals or conservation easements, so.
That's all I have.
Suzanne?
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? We'd be, opening a public comment. Is
that us?
Yeah, that's you.
Okay.
If you could say your name for the record.
I'm Bruce Blakemore, and I'm the president of the East Owl Creek HOA. And, but thank you for including us and communicating with us on a regular basis. It's been nice.
You're welcome.
The recommendations that we have in here are those are recommendations from the caucus or for the caucus?
The recommendations in the plan that you have reviewed, many of them are forwarded from the 2003 plan, and at the time, the Owl Creek Caucus did participate in development of that plan. As you know, the Owl Creek Caucus per se, isn't really functioning as a caucus at this point, so, there are recommendations that were either carried forward from that initial plan that had some caucus input, or they're recommendations that staff has added just based on other master plan updates that we've done recently, where there's a particular issue that we thought should be addressed.
I have three comments, or questions.
Okay.
The first one was slide 27, that was, road traffic and safety.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no mention of the elk. And when Owl Creek Road was paved, the largest objective, or the person who objected to it was I think it was called the Friends of the Elk.
Yeah.
Because they felt that the damage that could be done to the migration corridor would be, couldn't be mitigated in any way. And once it was, for some reason, they went away, it got paved. And when it was paved, one of the trade-offs was that it would be monitored to help prevent speeding and damaging the elk. And there is no monitoring at all. I know they do count cars because you can see the little deals on the road that count traffic, but there is no, I get past, I go the speed limit because I get mad about people speeding. And I get past with people giving me hand signs when they go by, or, you know, they get really mad, especially.
Turn right or left.
No, just get out, get away. And if you're not monitoring the road, I don't know how you can expand it or add additional traffic through buses and that sort of thing. And the complete abandonment of the elk migration corridor seems to be something that should be addressed by someone. And on the way you drafted the language on there, it's you're supporting efficient mass transit, but that's not the position of the people that live in that area. I think if you took a poll of the people that live there, if not 100%, at least 90% in my neighborhood, 100% would say we do not want buses.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why you would put in here that you support affordable, efficient mass transit, because we don't.
Shall I respond or? I think the key word there in that second bullet under transit is supporting mass transit and multimodal transportation connectivity to pedestrian and bicycle trail systems. Now, that is one that staff dropped in from to be consistent with other plans. If you think it leaves, it's not reflective of caucus agreement, then on the subject of transit specifically, then the Planning and Zoning Commission has the option to either modify it or delete it altogether if it's not representative of the caucus perspective. But again, the idea was to really support mass transit connectivity to pedestrian and bicycle trail systems, in part to remove cars from the road, right?
Right.
So that was one of the key words in that statement, but if you think it's misleading, it could be reworded or eliminated altogether, depending on the Planning Commission's direction there, but
I guess
that's,
I would go back to when the road was paved.
right,
And there's been a progression from that point forward of expanding and improving the road. As if there's a 20 or 30-year program of eventually this will be the primary corridor between Snowmass and Aspen. And so to me, this kind of language says, we're just following the plan we had from 30 years ago where we paved it. Now we've improved it. I believe right now it's finally reached the stage where it can accommodate mass transit. I don't think that was the condition until they resurfaced it last year. So it's one more step taken without really, in kind of a quiet way, where now we're ready, we can do it.
Mhm.
And then I see this and I think, oh,
uh-oh.
that's what we want to do.
Mhm.
And so I think what the caucus would say is, we object to mass transit being introduced into the Owl Creek
Mhm.
uh,
Period.
caucus area.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I think the one, obviously, Owl Creek Road completely shuts down, what, 2-3 times a winter? At least when there's an ice situation, and the one thing is the grade of the road coming out of Snowmass, that hill. That's keeping any. And I don't wanna say that's protecting us from it, but my guess is that's the main reason. There's no RAPTA bus transit, is that, 6 months out of the year. A bus even attempting that hill when there's ice on the road and the clearances and the corners, and they're not even. Attempting it, they don't have any routes that run through there, and my guess is that's the main reason, but. Like, putting that language out there is, I think it's good to,
Okay.
cause it's not a safe place. I don't think it's a safe road for mass transit. I mean, it shuts down 2 or 3 times, more than 3 times a year. When there's a little bit of ice effect and you have one person on that hill. I was stuck there last winter on that hill for a while. Just cause there was one wreck and then all the
Right.
cars were, no one could make it up. No one could make it down. No one had snow tires. Everyone, it was like a complete mess. And so
Mhm.
just having that grade. It
Precludes.
precludes, should preclude, bus transit would be my guess, but that's just my thought.
If we support making it easier for transit, then that sounds like it's encouraging, just get rid of that grade.
I would agree with
Right,
Chris
there's
that should be struck.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no bus stops on that whole piece. There aren't gonna ever be any bus stops on that piece.
Yeah,
I think that what this might say is that can become an alternate route when Brush Creek Road
Mhm.
gets more and more traffic. So I would support your comment that we delete that from the recommendation.
Would too.
that language can be a bus strategy, yeah.
Misread.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
The affordable housing that you addressed,
Mhm.
in our neighborhood, there's a concern about people converting their homes to short-term rental. And we don't want it, but we don't have a consensus of our neighbors that, if you have a house there and something comes up and you can't use it,
Mhm.
and they're paying a lot of money to rent these things. How do you, I can see that from what you drafted, there is a push against short-term rental. How can I guess that's just something with our HOA we have to do ourselves. If we want to protect ourselves from it, and we don't look to the larger area for that.
Actually, and Suzanne can help me here, we do have an ordinance regarding short-term rentals. And Suzanne, is there the opportunity to prohibit them in certain zone districts or?
The only place
areas?
that's prohibited currently is rural remote.
Okay,
That's the
so,
only thing the county adopted to restrict it. Definitely as a homeowners association, I mean, I would say that's a great tool.
Right.
And I guess, right, it's probably something we need to discuss with the attorneys if we start getting certain areas, making that request for
mhm,
a caucus area to prohibit it. What that looks like. Right now, the short-term rental regulations kind of live outside of the land use code. The rural remote
Right.
piece was the only So I would say, yes, there's probably possibility under the county code with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know which one would be more or less complicated. To
it's-
do it as your homeowners association
I
or.
can tell you it's getting more complicated.
Right.
And then I've had a couple of homeowners that received notice of a lot in Buttermilk that's being subdivided.
Mhm.
You know what I'm talking about?
The
Pfister
Pfister,
lot,
Pfister, two of the Pfister tracks, yeah.
And they're cutting one lot into 12.
They have 235s both being divided into, two lots each. So 2 lots would become 4,
Oh, so just 4 out of
Yeah,
the
right?
2. Okay, I think the notice that this guy called me about was it was being cut into 12, he thought. So it's just 2 lots being cut into 2, so it's 4.
Mhm.
Okay.
And that's just starting in the public process right now. Actually, it's coming to the planning commission I think that's the one on the
Yeah.
2nd of July.
And he can object to that, but my neighbor that got notification can
Mhm.
Yeah,
do that on his own. Okay. I think that's all that I had. The main concern is just the road and the total lack of any monitoring of it. And then when you throw the elk migration in there, people just racing through there, it's the older I get, the more difficult it is for me to accept it.
You have to work on those left and right arm signals.
So twice you used the word monitor, and you said it is monitored, but that just means that one.
I think, yeah,
Enforcement.
Well, snowmass, for example, at the corner of, I guess it's, Owl Creek Road and Highland, right as you're coming in, they'll have a police car there that monitors whether you run that stop sign, whether you speed, and then they're monitoring stops, before you go over the pass into the Owl Creek Valley,
Mhm.
and that becomes county. And on rare occasion, there will be a county officer near the red barn that will stop people.
Mhm.
But when he's there, he can stop everybody. So he stops if but I haven't seen anyone there, this year.
And I think you're using the word monitor, and what you're meaning, I think, is enforcement.
Enforcement,
Yeah.
sorry.
Right, I think what I'm hearing is that the plan really needs to, clearly highlight the need to address, that elk migration corridor and the need to monitor traffic to the extent we can and enforce traffic violations in that area, speed specifically. And perhaps we can make the recommendation stronger or make sure that the elk migration corridor is clearly spelled out as one of the concerns and issues that needs to be addressed.
It's a trapped section of County Road because you've got Aspen at the airport and Snowmass at the other end. So for someone from the county to go over and enforce that, they have to go through unenforceable areas for them. So it's kind of a hassle.
Right.
But, and I'm not I like the elk, I think they're really pretty, but my concern is that that was an issue for a lot of people when that road was paved. What happens to the elk? And the answer was, we'll make sure the cars don't go fast and we'll make sure that this isn't a primary force. And that hasn't been followed.
Mhm. It sounds like this is the moment.
Yeah,
I do have 2 additional people online.
Yep.
I'm gonna call on them to see if they'd like to say anything. Josh?
you tell them how to unmute.
Yeah. He declined to be promoted, so he hasn't,
Okay.
I assume he has nothing to say. And then we have a Heather on the line. Heather, do you have any comments? and she declined also. We did lose Chris Kiley. He was on earlier, but he's no, or I assume him, excuse me. But
The
he's
ski
no longer,
company.
no longer online.
Yes. Okay, I know he had to take care of kids tonight, so that may have shortened his ability to participate. It's time frame. Okay. I don't know if we want to close the public comment period for
There's no
now.
one, no one else.
There is no one
Close the
else.
Public comment. Go ahead.
Just one moment before you do that. I think there were a couple of things that you said. One, the ski company, letter,
Mhm.
and maybe another Owl Creek letter or so
Mhm.
that were not seen by the, I'm gonna call them the caucus. And
The letter that we received yesterday afternoon from Aspen Skiing Company has not been reviewed by Owl Creek residents that have been involved up to this point. The comments that were generated from our Owl Creek residents were shared amongst those who have been participating. So they have collectively seen and participated in that comment chain. There were also some comments submitted by Jeffrey Woodruff earlier on during the day today, because he was unable. He thought he might get here late, but obviously that's not going to happen. So, as he says, nothing below is mission critical, just some feedback on tonight's master plan adoption. So mostly they were some fairly minor adjustments to language primarily. So that is also feedback that you haven't seen. So
how many people? I can picture caucus meetings, and so I know that they all come to one place and
mhm.
things are discussed. I'm not sure how this went. So that, would you know who to submit that to?
Well,
I care.
I've done my best to reach out to Owl Creek residents who have expressed an interest in participating in the development and review of this plan. And that consists of residents who've been involved over the years, and actually the woman who has been identified as a caucus area representative in the past. She's involved, but doesn't take on the role as moderator or president of the caucus, because it's just not functional. So it's just been over the years, I've collected a number of the names and contact information for the residents who have expressed an interest in participating in this in master plan reviews and any other land use applications that they want to be a part of and comment on. So that's that. And we also did a postcard mailing using the assessor's records to inform all of the residents or property owners and renters, property owners that are identified in the assessor's record. So we reached out and tried to include anyone else that we didn't already have included.
So my concern is if do you think that the ski company proposals are?
I think it's an important question for the board for us to talk about right now that we've closed public comment. It is that this ski company letter came in so late.
Right.
And it has some language in here, and like what Doug was saying, the quote is like, seek to establish reliable and affordable broadband service, but then telecommunications infrastructure broadband service are two different things. And this is a big issue, and I'm sure I would assume if I was on this caucus, I would want a little more time to think about what that language means, because my guess is if you ask the ski company, when they say telecommunication infrastructure, if you ask them whether that applies to everyone in the Brush Creek caucus, like that language is for everyone or just for them? You know, like if can everyone put you know, if like I lived in Owl Creek and Verizon came to me and said, we're gonna offer you a contract to put a cell phone tower on my property, or is that just for them? Because my guess is that they're writing this language or recommending language into the caucus that is just pertinent for what they want to get done. Now, I could be totally wrong because you know, cell phone service up there is spotty and there is a safety issue, right? And so this is something for their caucus to talk about whether that, hey, like if Skico is gonna put a big tower like up on West Buttermilk or, you know, up in there and then everyone's, you know, service is better. Is that important to us? For me, I would say, I would guess that having that large cell phone tower infrastructure is not something they would want. But I think that's something that we need to give them the opportunity to talk about before, but that's my guess.
I agree. And you haven't closed the public hearing.
No, we can always reopen it and close it back up. And so would you guys like to comment on that?
I mean, I think you're correct, and we need time to think about it. I don't know what the scale of that tower is. And if you're sticking it up away from us on Buttermilk, it's somebody else's problem and we benefit from it, then that's fine. We don't have cell phone coverage unless we go on our Wi-Fi in our house. And so your safety concern's real. I mean, an accident on Oak Creek Road, you can't make a call. And so it would just be an issue of where it is and what it looks like.
Yeah.
It seems to me that there were two issues that you mentioned, we might need to send this back. Be at least courteous to send it back to the caucus for them to discuss before a decision is made here.
The other issue related to Aspen Skiing Company's recommendation regarding affordable housing.
Yes.
And basically their recommendation was that there be something in the plan that addresses the affordable housing generated by large homes that require management and services that generate employees, and that those employees should in some way be accommodated for within the Owl Creek master plan area, perhaps in the form of a CDU or on-site, on the site of a large home. So that's the recommendation that was made by Skico, and no, there's been no opportunity for you to consider that.
Just as an aside on that in our HOA, we have a lot that is separate from, it's not contiguous to the rest of the area. And it's over towards Aspen from the East Oak Creek entrance. And it has 3 affordable housing units on it now. And because it's unused and we're not doing anything with it, we've thought about the possibility of coming to you to see if we can use it for affordable housing, not for our development, but to sell it. The HOA just to submit it as something we're going to sell to convert to affordable housing. We assumed that it would be really difficult to switch from open space to affordable housing. But is that a fair assumption to make, or is it something that there's not a need for affordable housing that you'd encourage that?
That would be a question for staff. I mean,
Yeah, and I don't know enough about those approvals, if this was sort of PUD, so that acreage was accounted for in terms of your lot size. And anyway, there'd be some digging into understanding it. Would there be the opportunity to make that request to, amend would there be a process for that? Yes, probably, and to see how it plays out, you know, that's probably as much as I could help now
Okay.
without kind of knowing the background a little more.
Right,
I mean, it's a great idea, and it's, the intent behind it is really good, because I don't think a lot of HOAs would even contemplate that. You know, the city has a system where they sort of have a system with employee housing and developers where they have a credit
right,
system, so like a developer can option to build his own, you know, they can build employee housing, and then there's some sort of credit system where they can go back with the city and then sell it back to the city, I think, but there's some, but that's not in the county. But yeah, I mean, that's a great idea.
I think what we envisioned that we would be one of those, we'd be almost like a TDR
Yeah,
receiver site, and we would say, okay, we're gonna give up, 10 acres here
Yeah.
for employee housing. And in exchange for that, we get these credits that we can go sell to a builder somewhere else or do something with it. I think that's on Badger Hollow Road where we've got that,
Mm.
but it's a pretty spot, it's just disconnected from everything else.
Um,
and you said that the Buttermilk Master, the SKICO has a new master plan for
They're-
Buttermilk that they're contemplating?
They're working on a new ski rec master plan to bring in. I don't know what their timing is on that, but they've been actively working on it.
mhm. And that's,
And I don't know
yeah, yeah,
Right,
what's in.
Yeah.
right.
I think that we're getting to a point that we should move on.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would ask, Ellen, is that, I know you've reached out to the
Mhm.
various members that have been, you're able to, or everybody really
Mhm.
essentially. And have we sent them the final thing, or has it just been comment about, this is where we're headed, these are kind of some of the thoughts you want to be involved. I guess I'm wanting to make sure that they have an opportunity to review the resolution essentially, right? As opposed to piecemeal, with the conversation, to be involved. I think it's important that they have, whether they read it or not, they should have, and I don't know, maybe they have that.
What they have had the opportunity to review is the draft master plan and existing conditions report that we posted on our website on April 4th. So that is the plan, that's actually in your packet. What they haven't had an opportunity to review is the comments that we received yesterday from Skiing Company, and Jeffrey Woodruff's comments that he made tonight.
It sounds like there's been very little comment on the draft resolution, essentially.
The comments, you have seen the comments that were made primarily by Bruce and the East Owl Creek Homeowners Association. And a few other residents of the area. So those are the comments that were submitted based on the plan that we posted. And so,
I guess I'm somewhat reticent to just continue to kick it down the can and kick the can down the road and say, oh, we need to do more and
Mhm.
more and more and more. There's definitely some things I think in here that I feel strongly for and against, Jeff tried to say.
mhm,
How that fits in the resolution, and certainly not Jeffrey Woodruff who can come up with language like that and put it in there, so. Maybe it does make sense to clean it all up and, and my comments obviously are my comments.
mhm.
But that's kind of where I am, I'd like it to be right,
Mhm.
not delayed as much as possible, and perhaps we're probably not ready to approve it tonight, I think. It's just-
I think it should go back. I think that there was this substantive letter from the ski company
Mhm.
that they ought to see. I'm sure Jeffrey wants them to see what he suggested. And those need to be seen.
Then,
If we are eliminating the thing about mass transit,
mhm.
I mean, if we're in agreement that that's gonna be taken out, but no, that should be said. And you know, and the ski company can ask, you know, just like, they're just like anybody else. You know, I don't, as I've said, I'm completely supportive of them being ski area rec and having roof towers and ski area rec. I'm
Mhm.
not supportive at all of towers, just help or shelter.
So,
And I think for clarification purposes, it sounds as though we're gonna continue the public hearing, but did I hear you say that generally you're not in support of allowing house size to be varied based on visual impacts from the road? That should be deleted? Or do you remember that recommendation?
I remember the confusion about it. If the caucus says that they want to be able to, the caucus already,
Maybe to clarify, and Ellen, help me.
Okay.
This came out of it did not come from the Owl Creek Caucus. It
Correct.
did not come from these neighbors. It was sort of using things from other, master plans to go, this was something that was important to Castle Creek.
Mhm.
May not, was not a comment that came from the Owl
and
Creek.
it really would be, it would be doubling up on something that they can also.
If
always
that
do.
language isn't there, it
They
doesn't
can
change
still-
what we already do under the
Right.
code
Okay.
today,
Yeah.
where we will consider visual impacts
Okay.
from the public lands.
I would suggest that that language be struck based on the comments that you've made.
Yes.
So, okay. I only ask because, I think what I'm hearing you say is that you'd like to continue the public hearing to a date certain. So that, and during the interim, I can go ahead and at least, I will forward the letter from Aspen Skiing Company to, or I will put it on site and make sure that all of the residents who have participated to date are aware of it and can review it and comment if they so choose. And also provide them with Jeffrey's input, Jeffrey Woodruff's input, that is, he's one of our planning commissioners. And I can make changes, based on some of the comments that you've made beyond those two, inputs. Or to respond to those inputs and bring a revised plan back to you so that you can see what it looks like in a final form, before adopting it. I think, is that,
yeah,
Does
that
that
sounds good.
seem
I'd
good?
also like, before I entertain a motion for continuance, I'd also like a comment from RAFTA about,
I have,
yeah, because I'd like to hear what they have to say, because they might say, we have no intention on ever operating public transit on this road due to the grade or, narrowness, how narrow it is, or, or who knows? I'd like to hear from them. And then I'd like to hear maybe some comments from engineering about how we can maybe help the Owl Creek Caucus. And I'm guessing this is just some tactical placement of some very large boulders in some areas where that's how I would do it, where people can't pull over and, off the side of the road and cause a traffic situation. I'm sure there's some pretty easy solutions on how maybe we can make the elk safer, the people safer. There wasn't so much,
Cut out the pony rides.
yeah, all that. But yeah, that's about it.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
In the draft, there's a discussion about reduction of 90% for the of emissions. There's no, I don't think that came from the caucus. That was generated by the county, I would guess, or
Yeah.
by your group. And it's in there with no knowledge of what those emissions are that you're talking about reducing, or how it's gonna be done.
Right.
And I don't want that to be considered something that came from the people that actually live there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that matters or not. I got a little confused as we're going through this because those aren't things that came from the caucus.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's like one of the county's, 25-year goals or 30-year, 40-year goals about just in general reducing emissions, and that'll be my guess, but.
Okay.
So,
And just, you know, for your edification, the county has been collecting greenhouse gas emissions inventories, a couple now. And so we do have some specific data about, greenhouse gas emissions, and understand that in our county, it's unusual, but the principal emitter of those greenhouse gas emissions is homes, is the built environment, specifically homes, rather than transportation, which is typically the primary principal generator. So we are collecting data, and we'll be moving forward, providing more analysis and data to move forward, make some decisions to implement the Board of County Commissioners' very emphatic need to address climate change, and greenhouse gas emissions as being one of the principal goals. So we're not just pulling it out of the air, and there will be different approaches. You know, we'll have to come up with the ideal, most efficient approaches to accomplishing those goals. Some of the action that's already been taken is a reduction in house size, because we understand that has some implications that affect greenhouse gas emissions. So,
Decks and stuff.
right, there's some energy code amendments that have already been made, and there probably will be more. And there are some specific recommendations from that Community Growth Advisory Committee that speak to potential changes to policy to address.
I just would want,
that issue.
in our HOA,
Yeah,
I wouldn't want someone reading this and saying, wait, we never suggested that we wanted to
Right.
reduce it to 90%, and we don't want to be
right.
burdened with the cost of it. And so how did it get in there? So it got in there because it's more of a county issue than it is.
It is, yeah, that is one of those broader community issues, concerns, that we need to address as a community, looking at the big picture of the whole community, and issues that need to be addressed. So there may be some results that weren't generated from your caucus because we were looking at the bigger picture and the community
So
need.
they could be clear that was
Yeah.
that's with the county or the larger community than it does the caucus.
That came specifically from Board of County Commissioners' direction. We have also actually gained some support there from, as an example, the Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus. They're very much in favor of that approach. There are other, but clearly that did not come directly from the residents that we've heard from today.
Jasmine, do you have any comment?
No, but I would like to make a motion to table action and continue the public hearing to a date certain.
Awesome. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Yeah, so, for now, let's call the date certain. What is today, the 18th?
We have the 2nd, the
And the
16th,
16th.
the 8th, or the 20th.
Yeah, let's continue it to, the July 16th long-range meeting. If we need to continue it from there, we will. But let's go with that for now.
All
And
right.
right, hopefully that's just kind of right, just touch on
I
a
think
couple
that's
of
great.
issues
Yeah,
and
just
an
to
update on those.
get a few things.
Yep.
All right,
Um,
we have another agenda item. It says preparation for July 16th, Pickens County Comprehensive Plan update. I'm guessing that's something I can make a motion to continue at a later date as well. I was kidding.
Is there a short version? We can-
yeah, there is a short version, if you'll
Yeah.
bear with me.
Yeah.
I don't think this will take long.
Thank you,
Basically,
guys.
thank
Thank you so
you,
much.
thank you, everybody on screen. Yeah, so if you could go ahead. and
Yeah, give me
throw up a
one second
few
here,
slides.
sorry.
Basically, I was gonna give you a brief, comprehensive plan update. where we are on the roadmap, to accomplishing, that update. And, so go to the next slide, please. As you'll recall, the comp plan update is part of an integrated, with the 2050 vision process, and that's why we have this screen. But the purpose, of the update is to let you know, for the next slide, please. Oops, sorry. That's okay. So the purpose of this update is to let you know where we are in developing the existing conditions as a first step in the process of updating the plan as part of that Vision 2050 work ahead of us. And then to add to the homework that we've already given you to review resources and literature regarding development of contemporary comprehensive plans. I don't know how far you've gotten in that homework endeavor. And discuss the agenda briefly for our next long-range meeting with you on July 16th. Basically, we are in that step one, identified on the screen there, launching the comp plan process, really trying to identify where we are now. So for the next slide, this slide just identifies, really goes a step further and saying, this is still in step one, and how we establish where we are now is by evaluating existing conditions. And this is really existing conditions are the bedrock in a comprehensive plan update. And this update is clearly grounded in the Vision 2050 core values that have been established by the CGAC. Given that, we are now moving into evaluating existing conditions, and as part of that existing conditions work, staff has started to put together an inventory of countywide planning efforts. In addition to that, we're at the same time looking at demographic, economic, social, and geographic conditions. So next slide.
With the August plans being part of the inventory of the county growth.
Absolutely, yes. So, and I'll get into that quickly, but you'll probably recall that there were 5 plan elements established for the comprehensive plan update. And these are elements that are typically included in contemporary plans: built environment, natural environment, economic health, community health, and regional approach. So next slide, please. Based on the input that we have to date from our staff review, we've identified policy areas that relate to each of those 5 elements that were just on the screen. And using the built environment as just an example, we've listed policy areas that you expect to see under the built environment category topic, like land use and growth management, transportation, climate action, waste management, and utilities and the like. Staff has gone through the exercise of identifying what we're calling assets and opportunities that already exist in the form of plans and reports in the county and the region. These plans and reports will be used to inform direction in these policy areas in the left column. And this exercise tells us where there are assets, and the plans exist and we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and where there are gaps or opportunities to obtain more information to inform this policy direction. The community, as you'll see from the listing on the right of the existing plans and reports, the Community Growth Advisory Committee final recommendations are going to be front and center and included as when we look at existing information to inform these policy area direction, So just wanted you to be aware of the really extensive background work that staff is doing as part of this initial first step, looking at existing conditions. And if you go to the next slide, I just included another, just to give you an idea, under the natural environment topic. again, we've established the fact that there's a lot of work that's already been done out there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. But there are other areas where we may have to, get some more, information to inform these policy areas under the topics that have been established. So next slide, please. What we're going to do is give you some more homework. In addition to the work that you've done, hopefully looking at comprehensive plan resources that exist today to inform your work going forward. We're going to ask you to review the Community Growth Advisory Committee recommendations. And we'll send you a link after this meeting. That's what's next. We met with the Vision 2050 work group at the end of May. Doug, I can't remember if you were there. I think you were not able to be there. Basically, to give them an update on the comprehensive plan update as part of the Vision 2050 project. In a nutshell, they continue to be committed to working with us to inform the progress moving forward.
How active is that?
Sorry?
How often are they meeting?
To be determined. They've expressed an interest in meeting as often as possible, perhaps on a monthly basis, but to be determined. And we'll let you know when we know more.
I say that because I've heard that they're getting restless.
Yes, and I think that's probably a fair statement, and we plan to continue.
A lot of work to happen.
Yeah.
It's been slow to get moving.
Mhm.
We met with them just a couple weeks ago, so,
Yeah.
I mean, they would like to still be engaged, and I'd say probably half of the group showed up for the meeting, virtual meeting. And we heard from those folks that, they're interested in remaining engaged. We're not gonna be running a meet with them every 2 weeks kind of a process, like,
Right,
you guys lived through, which was awesome. But so really have to figure out, how best to tap into them, but make it work within all of the other work that we're gonna be trying to move forward. So, so definitely, we're trying to keep strings into them to keep them involved. But then figure out how best to do that.
yeah,
And still
and,
get some work done.
right, but the intent is to keep them informed. And to the extent that involves meeting with them, we'll see what that looks like. But also encouraging them to participate in other public engagement that opportunities that we hope to embark on.
So
And
there's no meeting set up soon with them.
We just had one.
yeah,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
did just have
2
one
weeks ago, is that?
about,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really just to bring them up to date on the Vision 2050 project, and also how the comprehensive plan
Mhm.
is integrated into that whole process. Given that, we're gonna add, I will send you a link and ask you to review. For those of you, it'll be a refresher. Some of you, it'll be a refresher, and others really to take a look at those recommendations. And we will be working in the meantime on a public education campaign on the Vision 2050 project and how the CGAC recommendations are integrated over the next month to really make everybody aware of the project and those CGAC recommendations. And we will update you in July, on July 16th, on what that whole process and engagement piece and work group involvement looks like.
Good.
So that's it. I just wanted to kind of prep you for where we are, and where we're going, at least in the short term. And that's it. That's all I've got, unless you have questions.
And so that's July 16th.
July 16th is your next long range meeting. You have a July 2nd current planning meeting
We do have one second.
scheduled as well.
Okay.
So,
That's true.
Yeah, scoring.
yeah. So thank you, everybody. I think we closed the public hearing, right? Or continued the public hearing to July 16th. Okay. So, any Suzanne, any other, yeah. Thank you, and I know we ran late, we started a little late. Thank you for persevering. Thanks.
And I apologize, apparently when I sent Heather the request to speak, she pushed declined and didn't mean to.
Oh,
She did have a couple of questions that she put in the chat that she was curious about, so I don't know if you know who Heather is.
I do. She's. a
And
resident.
if you want to call her, she was asking where the proposed site for the broadband towers were. I think we kind of answered that, and then the Basalt Water District, her comment was, the Romero Group now manages, Jim Corpola is the point person for understanding the system, so. You
We
may,
know, and we do know that.
yeah, so
Buttermilk.
you may want to reach out to her.
Okay, yeah, I'll call Heather. She lives in East Owl Creek subdivision and she's a ranch manager there. So, okay, thank
Motion
you.
to adjourn, I need a motion.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Entertain a motion. Second. Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Jasmine.
much.
Hope you feel better.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Bye all.
Bye, Jeff.
Hi, Jasmine.
Okay.
You're late. Looks like there's still some beautiful daylight out there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Run fast. Catch it.
Yeah.